So hi Stan, thanks so much. I wanted to say first of all thank you on behalf of the town for all your service
thank you.
over the past years. We really appreciate it. And we'll start with our first question today. So could you describe your background and experience and what has motivated you to seek this position once again?
Sure. Well, as many people know, my wife and I moved to Bolton back in 1989. And I've served the town government, for the last 18 years. I first started out 4 years at the planning board, 3 of those as chairman. And then I did have a total of 12 years as selectman. First started out with 1 term, and then unfortunately didn't get reelected, and then spent 2 years on the advisory committee, which is the finance committee in town. And then after 2 years, decided to run again for selectman, and I've been in the selectman now for 3 consecutive 3-year terms. So from that perspective, obviously I have a lot of experience in town government, the various departments, working with the various departments in the other towns. And as far as what motivated me, I think the town's going through a lot of interesting times now, and we have my 2 colleagues who are new on the board, and really haven't participated in the past in terms of other aspects of town government. So I think my long-term experience and knowledge and workings of the details of town government, I think are an asset, and certainly want to continue to help and support the town.
Great, thank you. What personal characteristics do you think are important to be an effective selectman?
Well, I think there are quite a few. One is you have to be open and be able to listen to all sides of an argument. There may be issues on the table that you might have a personal view on, but as a selectman, you have to divorce yourself from your personal views or even the views that your family has in regards to a particular issue, and you really have to be neutral. You have to look at the issue from all sides, and certainly try to respect the opinions of both sides of the argument, because typically there will be half of the audience will want whatever is being brought before, and half the audience does not want, for a variety of reasons. So I think it's being open and listening to all sides. And at the end of the day, it's important to be making the decision that's right for the town. It may not necessarily be right personally for me and my wife, but it's what is the best decision for the town.
People.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay. What do you consider to be Bolton's top 3 priorities that you would address during the next term, and how would you tackle them?
Sure. Well, certainly, dovetailing from the last question in terms of taxes is the town budget. We've, as I said, we work very hard in terms of trying to maintain that budget and provide level services. But we're always under constraints for issues of less government funding, any type of local state aid, or whatever the little that we get, because we are an affluent community, but there's less and less of that occurring. There's also less in terms of grants that are being applied, and more communities are applying for those grants. Some of the grants that we apply for really originate from Boston, and it's all the communities from Boston beyond Bolton that apply, and we're not always going to be able to get those grants. So I think we need to look at every possible avenue for opportunities to get grants or find more creative ways to implement some of the things that we're going to be doing in town to minimize the impact on the budget. Next to schools, I think we have a new administration that has come in, both from the district level with Brooke Clenchey as superintendent last year, and also we have a new members on the school committee. And I think that has been very positively received. I've been working very closely with Brooke as well as our school reps, and I think there's a whole new dynamic that's occurring, and I think a much better partnership is forming between certainly the town of Bolton, and I would imagine also Stowe and Lancaster, but certainly with Bolton, and working with them in terms of how to manage their programs. There are going to be capital needs coming up. We have a few this year that were small ones in terms of replacement of boilers at Florence Sawyer School, which fortunately, because now we're a green community, some of the funding that we can get for those boilers are coming from the Green Initiative, which is good. But as you know, when we've talked about it for years now, the improvements to the science labs are sorely needed to help to maintain accreditation. So we need to work with the district to figure out the best way to move forward with that and when to do that, because we're looking at, just for that project, between 10, 12 or more $1 million. And although the 3 towns are going to be shouldering that expense, the money has to come from somewhere. And then lastly, I think is rural character, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in terms of economic development. But we have a nice small town. We don't have a lot of industry. We don't have a lot of zoning, and we have to figure out creative ways to manage that, and potentially to bring in a business or two, that will help a little bit in that regard. But I'll have more to say that when we get to the later questions concerning.
What is the role of the Economic Development Committee in addressing residents' concerns about keeping Bolton affordable?
Well, as you know, we do have an Economic Development Committee in town, and they try to work with businesses and whatnot in town to keep the businesses we have and to potentially attract more business. People should know that there is a very limited amount of land that's zoned limited business or commercial in town. So, even if all of that land were to be developed commercially, it would have minimal impact on the town, even from a financial impact. I mean, I think, in the past people have said, we bring businesses to town and, the tax rate will go way down, and that really isn't the case. I mean, you would need a tremendous amount of business to come in order to do any type of offsetting. But any type of business that comes in that provides tax revenue without necessarily the burden of dealing with children going to schools or additional support from the services, police and fire and whatnot, is always a positive thing. And I think also from the perspective of making the town a much more viable town, an attractive town for families to move in. One of the challenges that the Economic Development Committee has is that we have a number of properties in town, commercial properties, that are not up to full occupancy. We have the Condyne building, which used to be called the Flatley building, which is on the corner of 117 and 495 on this side of town. On the other side of town, we have Paragon Communications, which was formerly Future Electronics. They've moved in, but they have a lot of space that they're trying to sublease. The old Cobham facility, which was almost right across the street on 117, they have moved out, and we're now trying to find a tenant either for the building or another business to come in. And then we have the Skinner Auction House property on 117. They moved to their facility to Marlborough, and that property has been vacant for some time. So we have that challenge of just filling those properties. And one of the things that business brokers and real estate agents and business coming into town, the potential sort of lack of amenities, and I think you have this juggling act between what some of the residents want. Obviously no fast food and no big box stores and those kinds of things, but you need to bring in some additional things that make it attractive for the businesses who have employees who are now coming to Bolton to work, for them to be. So it is sort of a juggling act. But hopefully, I think the Economic Development Committee is doing a good job. I know Don Lowe works quite a bit with business brokers on a day-to-day basis, showing the properties and working with the owners of those buildings to see if we can get some additional business into town, which I think also in the long term helps increase the valuation of the town. Increased valuations help lower the tax rate a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are lower, but it lowers the tax rate and a little bit of tax relief from the standpoint of the businesses coming in. So I think that's going to be an ongoing and continuous process as we move forward.
Yeah, a lot of people to thank there that are working hard on that committee, like yourself. Is there anything you'd like to address that has not been mentioned so far? We haven't talked about?
Some of the other questions, yes. We need to look at potentially some additional revenue sources for the town. We are pretty much hamstrung in terms of looking at other ways to bring in revenue into the town. There were two that the towns has looked at in the past and voted no. But I think moving forward and hopefully, getting back on the board in May, I think we might want to take another look at that. One is the Community Preservation Act. Essentially, it's a way for getting some matching funds from the state, and the state has created this pool of money from real estate transactions that can come back into the state. Now, yes, it does mean that the town has to contribute a little bit in terms of, a slight increase in taxes, but this also dovetails with my comment about saving. CPA funds can be used for a variety of purposes. Some of it needs to be used for historical restoration and other activities like that. Some of the money is unrestricted. Unfortunately, we did have the 2 bites at the apple and we didn't take, but communities like Stowe next door, who have been part of the CPA now for years, have gotten well in excess of $1 million in terms of funds from that program, which they have used to renovate certain of their historical properties. And certainly, if we had participated when we had, the $325,000, for instance, that we need to borrow for the repair of the portico at the town hall, CPA funds could have been used for that instead of having to borrow for it. So I think it's worth taking another look. The program may not necessarily be as attractive in the past because more communities have signed on, but I think it's worth a look. I think also we did pass up some time ago the ability to add a slight increase in our sales tax rate for food, purchased foods like restaurants and alcohol purchases. And it was voted down before. But in looking online, well over 50 or 60 or more % of what's available of the communities, cities and towns in Massachusetts have adopted that. So it's not a case that only 5 or 10% have. Clearly, now a majority of the cities and towns have adopted that additional tax rate. And for a $100 purchase, we're only looking at 4.5 cents additional in terms of taxes. So it's not a real burden for someone who, say, is going out to a restaurant or buying, actually it's 75 cents for $100. If someone's going to be buying a $6 or $7 sandwich, it's only a nickel. So, but I think, one, we don't have a lot of establishments like that in the town of Bolton, but it's a little bit of revenue. And what we're trying to do is potentially earmark some reliable sources of revenue to specific programs. We have an OPEB obligation that we have to fulfill each year. This is the other employment benefits, and we started to fund that out of free cash. It would be nice if we could find some additional revenue streams where we could apply those revenue streams to that and not necessarily take that money out of free cash. I think one of the other things that we've done recently, which is applicable to this whole discussion about revenue sources, we regionalized police and fire dispatch, and we're now with the Devens group. That has done 2 things. One, it has provided cost savings of at least 6 figures for the town, so that's less money that we have to spend on dispatch, and it's still providing superior service. We haven't had any issues to date with that. As a matter of fact, Devens is looking to expand a little bit, and as they add, they'll be adding a few more communities, not many, but as they add some additional communities, our costs, Bolton's costs, actually go down a little bit. So as they grow that facility, our fixed costs go down some. So it's even more of a benefit, and I think we need to look along those lines for that. So I think those are some of the things that we need to be addressing in the coming years.
Okay, that sounds great. Would you like to make any sort of closing statement?
Sure. As I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I think experience is important. Being a selectman is not a job for someone who, and I applaud people who want to sign up and want to try it out, but being a selectman is serious business. We get involved with quite a number of serious issues, which need to be deliberated and dealt with, as they come. And there's a whole pile of state regulations and state laws and the nuances of the budget and all of that that come into play. And if you don't have the experience or the knowledge, it's very difficult to make, informed decisions and timely decisions. I think also the fact that I have served the town as long as I have, I've developed a very good working relationship with all the department heads in town and the people who work in those departments. I have a very good working relationship with the police department. And certainly now with Brooke involved, the superintendent and our new school committee members, I've always worked with them and certainly the previous regime. But early on, I've developed a very good relationship with Brooke. I've worked with her quite closely on a couple of critical issues, and which I think is key. And I think that's important when you're dealing with being a selectman. You need to have the knowledge and have the experience to be able to deal with the issues at the time that you're dealing with, and not necessarily have to either have decisions that are protracted and take a long time, or just unfortunately make a wrong decision just because you just don't have that institutional knowledge.
Yes, and those relationships.
Yes, and certainly I hope that I hope and would like to continue to have the town's trust, and certainly look forward to serving the town again, and hopefully people will also think that, and hopefully come May 9th, I will continue to be one of your selectmen.
That would be great. Thanks so much. We really appreciate your
Thank you
time.
very much.
All right.
Appreciate
Have
it.
a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Teresa. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
All right. So we'll just start by asking if you don't mind describing your background and your experience and what has motivated you to seek this position in Bolton.
So I actually have a degree in wildlife biology, and ended up working here at Bolton Access TV. And that is part of what has driven me to be a candidate for Selectmen. I've worked 6 years here and watched almost every meeting that we record.
I'm sure.
Which, besides Selectmen and town meetings and special meetings, is planning, conservation, tri-town, school committee, zoning board of appeals. So almost all of them. So I have a really unique perspective to bring that, to understand what issues are facing Bolton, and also how all the boards are working and or not working together to get us where we want to be.
So what personal characteristics do you think are important to be an effective selectman?
I think it's really important to be able to listen and to appreciate that other people have a different point of view. Yeah. I think that it really is imperative that as this town grows and changes, that there's more opportunity for more people to be involved and to feel like what they have to say is important and matters. And I think that understanding, even if we don't agree, we can still get along and we can still respect each other, is really paramount at this time.
Yes, I agree fully. That sounds good. What interesting challenges and possibilities do you see for Bolton in the next 10 years?
I think there's great possibility and challenges around keeping us rural. I think that if we want to do that, and that's what our master plan says we're supposed to be doing, I think we really need to take that to heart. All the committees do, and use the master plan as a guiding principle. I moved here because it's rural. Lots of people did, and we've kept it rural. We've managed to do that, and so I think that is our biggest potential and challenge at the same time.
Yes, definitely. It's our niche, right?
Yeah.
What do you consider to be Bolton's top 3 priorities that you would address during the next term, and how would you tackle them? So 3 priorities.
3 priorities. So the first priority is taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, residential taxes, I really just don't ever want to hear about another elderly person who's lived here for many years who can't afford their house anymore. I think that's just tragic, and it's not okay that there are a lot of seniors in this town, and they deserve to be able to live out their lives here and not at least not have to leave for financial reasons. I think that I've heard in the past discussions about how much we have business zoned, and that even if we filled them all, it wouldn't touch, the tax rate. And so I think we really need to look into that and see how much would we need, how much business owned land would we need, and whether or not we'd need a multi-tiered tax rate in order to help subsidize the residential tax rate. I'm not sure that's the direction we should go in, but I think we should actually fully explore it out, figure out how much land we need. We have other towns like Stowe who use their lower village and turned it into commercial. How do they feel about it now? They've made that decision to try to offset their taxes. So are they glad they did it? Did it really work like they thought it was? I think we need to look harder at other towns and how they're managing and figure out how to bring the residential tax rate down.
As we grow.
So for priority number 2,
Yeah.
I think it's the rural character of Bolton. I think we are in this unique place, and our master plan should be used by all the boards to guide us and to keep us being rural and looking rural. I think that's a really, really important part of it. And again, our master plan says that one of the ways to do that is to buy land, which is a great idea, except then that raises our residential tax rate. And so we need to figure this out. We need to figure out how to keep both sides of that.
Yeah.
And priority number 3 would be bringing collaboration and respect and civil discourse back to the Selectmen meetings. It is so important that more people get involved with town government. I mean, this is all our town, and we're going to disagree about things.
Right.
However, we all want what's best for this town.
Yes.
And so we need to be able to respect each other. And, this latest caucus was another example. Some seats weren't even filled, and people were running unopposed. How do we get people involved? I think we need to do something to promote the fact that these boards always need people and always need input. You don't have to sit on the board even, but to come to the meeting to make a suggestion or have something to say, I think is really important. We don't live in a vacuum, that everybody has ideas about things, and we should utilize what we have in this town, the people we have in this town, and try to get them involved. And I think that's how we're going to keep Bolton the special place that it is.
Yep. Can you describe your overall approach and philosophy to moving Bolton into the future?
Collaboration.
Okay.
I think the more people that get involved, the better off the town is.
Yeah.
I think that even if you don't sit on a board, you need to understand that your contribution to that board, your voice, can make a big difference in how a decision is made and how an issue is approached. And I think that respecting each other and understanding that we're not always going to agree, and that's okay. We don't have to always agree. We're still neighbors, we're still a community, and we all care about this town.
Right. And sometimes disagreements are how we make things happen, right?
Absolutely.
So, what is the role of the Economic Development Committee in addressing residents' concerns about keeping Bolton affordable?
So this is kind of a tricky question because it does go back to what I said before about looking at the businesses we have now and continuing to try to keep those buildings full, and then taking it further and how much more business space would we need, and is that something we really want to do as a town? I think that we have been blessed with the salt box, that someone took over that wanted the same vision I think the town wanted. And so, finding more of those opportunities would be amazing.
Yes, definitely. Is there anything you'd like us to address that we haven't talked about so far?
No, not necessarily. I'm really excited about running. I've learned so much in running. I can't thank the people enough who've supported me or have come to me with questions and further discussion and further thought on the issues here in Bolton.
Yeah, great. Well, any closing statements you'd like to make?
I really believe that I can make a difference to what's going on now.
Yeah.
I think that I can bring collaboration and more respect for individuals to the selectmen meetings and help facilitate a discussion about where Bolton is going and what it needs to do to get there. Because community is obviously, with all my hundreds of hours of community volunteer work that I've done besides my job that has involved me so tightly with this with Bolton and the issues, I think that that's a really unique position for a seated selectman to have.
Yes.
And so I would like everybody to vote on May 8th.
Yes.
So thank you very
All
much.
right. Thanks so much. It was great to talk.
It was great to talk to you.
All right.